BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. We talked recently about Marianne Williamson on this channel, and in the past we've also mentioned two particular books. One was called A Mindful Nation, and the other was called The Real Food Revolution. These were things that were mentioned by the now practically disgraced Congressman Tim Ryan from the 13th District of Ohio. He didn't do too well in the presidential primary, and I even called him out on that, saying I was very disappointed with his performance, but I did like some of the ideas that were expressed in the books that he wrote. And prior to the we're still going through the 2019 Democratic primary. At the start of the primary, Tim Ryan made a claim that he wanted to win the yoga vote. And people were like, well, what's he talking about? And he said that by talking about things like social and emotional learning, by talking about having mindfulness and mental awareness classes in schools, and a lot of people in the United States of America are even calling for meditation classes to take place in the United States public school system. They're just like, this is one of the ways that we can really combat these epidemics of violence, the school-to-prison pipeline, mass shootings, domestic abuse. The way you gotta stop it is you have to stop it before it starts, because any sort of legislative measure you're going to be putting in after the fact is just going to make things more chaotic. This is something that has to begin with the education that we are giving children, and it's really not only children, because it should really extend into adulthood. And that's another thing that's really talked about in a lot of the policies that have been put forth in the 2019 Democratic primary, the 2020 Democratic primary, and perhaps the Republicans will get into some of this stuff during the debates once we get closer to the congressional and Senate elections. I mean, this is an election year, and that is the concept of pre-K to 14. I mean, I gotta tell you, I think universal pre-K is an absolutely brilliant idea, because it's it teaches people conflict resolution and social interaction skills at a younger age. But when I said it goes beyond childhood, is if you have something like pre-K to 14 as an educational system, that means it's also including community college for 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. And the more education that somebody has, the less likely they are to go to prison. So the statistics say, and some people like Tom Hartman have talked about that. But the thing, though, is, what's the name for that wing of the party that supports all that? What's the name for this yoga vote? The reason I did not like the name yoga vote is it's so much more than yoga. And I know Tim Ryan practices yoga, but I know that it's so much more than that. And Marianne Williamson came on the scene, and when I did my first upload about her, I thought very clearly that she was representing a fraction of the Democratic Party that often doesn't get talked about. And it's kind of what Tim Ryan was trying to say when he said the yoga vote, but the best thing that I could come up with it was the people that watch the Gaia network. That's one name that I gave out. Then just, it came to me once, right after I finished my most recent upload on Marianne Williamson. We've talked a lot about A Politics of Love. I think it's a great book, actually. We even did a couple reading sessions from that book here on this channel, and perhaps I'll include a link. But the name we should have used that whole time is the Gaia audience. The Gaia audience is that section of the Democratic Party that often gets neglected when it comes to election time. It's the section of the Democratic Party that's talking about mindfulness and mental awareness education. It's the section of the Democratic Party that is talking about things like yoga and meditation. The section of the Democratic Party that's talking about love and consciousness. Because some people do mention these things, but what's the name for them? Because not all Democrats talk about that subject. I mean, I even heard Senator Mike Gravel talk about the religion of love back in 2007 when he was running against Barack Obama on the debate stage. Some people do, but not all. And I think, just to give a name to that, the Gaia audience. That was what we'll be calling it from now on this channel. And I know some channel like this is not going to change modern culture. I know that some channel like this is not going to be able to just have an enormous amount of influence over people, because first and foremost, this subject isn't the most popular, and secondarily, small channel to begin with. But the thing is, though, to talk about a subject that doesn't really get talked about nearly enough, there really is something that is missing in our political system. And now we can forget the labels of Democrat and forget the labels of Republican. I only brought up the Democratic Party because many people in the Democratic Party have been talking about it frequently. When you get into the third parties, absolutely people want to talk about this stuff. Like, say, the Natural Law Party, for example. They've been talking all about transcendental meditation, the Maharishi school. I mean, they've talked about this stuff for so long. And I would say, though, that you could even include things like the Natural Law Party, or perhaps things like the Peace and Freedom Party to a certain extent. Roseanne Barr ran for president on the Peace and Freedom ticket. But the thing is, though, anyone who is on the side of earth love and the need for a politics of love, the people who want to sort of understand the relationship between consciousness and humanity and are looking at that relationship in terms of the political system, that is the Gaia audience. That's the best name that I can come up for. But the thing is, we're going to be mentioning the Gaia audience frequently, so look out for that. Now, there's something out there called ecofeminism, and I would include the ecofeminists in the Gaia audience. And the way that that would sort of function is, I mean, first and foremost, because I just think they would fall under this umbrella term. And I even said it when on my first upload about Marianne Williamson. I thought that she would represent this type of eco-conscious spiritual side of the Democratic Party. But then I was like, why am I saying the word eco? Marianne Williamson doesn't mention that too much, but then I was thinking about the eco-feminists. Ecofeminists are those who believe that the concept of femininity will bring us closer to world peace, and you can see this expressed in a variety of ways. Some people say flat out that testosterone is destructive, and that if all the leaders of the world were female, then the world would be a better place. Do I agree with that? No, absolutely not. I mean, we're just going to have people voting for who they believe is best, male or female. I mean, are we going to have a female president in the United States someday? Yes, but not because testosterone is evil, because she will win a democratic election. I mean, she will be the person who is going to be successful based on the voters' choice in a democratic election, and anything else will just be a quarrel with the voters of the states and the United States of America as a whole, not simply because testosterone is destructive. Some people go really, really too far with this stuff. But at the same time, how many times have we said on this channel, it's kind of fun to listen to some far out stuff on the internet. And I found some things about ecofeminism in the past, and what I have to say about that is it does fall under this umbrella term, but at the same time it's just trying to reshape the concept of divisiveness in a way that they think that they're going to be able to get away with it. And is testosterone destructive? I mean, what I can say about that is simply having a woman in the role of leadership compared to that of a man is not the be-all, end-all. It is not going to be the cure-all for everything. That's what I would say to that. And that's also just pure identity politics. But it's identity politics in a destructive way, not thinking that I'm going to vote for this candidate because they're going to represent my side of the community. It's quite to the contrary, saying I'm going to vote for this candidate because they are going to be a more valuable asset to world peace because of their gender. I mean, I don't know, maybe the eco-feminists will go now toward the non-binary genders and just be like, well, they got kind of this and kind of that. Oh, they don't want to declare their gender at all? All right, that's closer to world peace. I mean, and in all seriousness, somebody might actually come up with that in the next 5 years. But, I mean, that's partially being silly. But at the same time, though, we should really look out for the fractions of politics that don't really get neglected too much, because I do have to tell you, when Marianne Williamson and Tim Ryan and, as we said, Mike Revell's made some comments about this stuff in the past, when these people are presenting this type of material on the campaign stage, it's like, it's good to have more conversations about various aspects of what the voters want to hear, because many people who are voting Democratic, and I'm not a Democrat, mind you, their entire sort of worldview is being neglected, and they have Democratic voters who are standing for this stuff, but their voice isn't really being heard. Their representation isn't being heard. And I mean, I do include something like that, like Mike Gravel talking about how, okay, he might have grown up in the Unitarian Church, but his religion is just love. How many times have you heard somebody just say that their religion is just love? You want to talk about divine love, spiritualism? I mean, those types of things are often neglected from a lot of the conversations people are having. But really, what I can say about that is just that let's look out for the Gaia audience. And let's look out for some different aspects of it. And let's just sort of see where this thing is going to go. And let's talk more about it and use this name, the Gaia audience, at least we will here on this channel in our uploads. I mean, Marianne Williamson tried to win the Gaia audience vote. Hey, she was unsuccessful. Tim Ryan was mega unsuccessful. And you want to know why? Because he reshaped his campaign into just talking about Rust Belt issues and trying to bring jobs back to the Rust Belt. And I'm like, though that's a very good thing to do, mind you, but where are all of these things that he was talking about in his books, The Real Food Revolution and A Mindful Nation? I mean, where he said some things about social and emotional learning on the campaign trail. But, I mean, I was reading the book, The Real Food Revolution. I still have it right here, and it's like, there's so many detailed things in there, like breaking up the monopolies on companies that sell seeds. So it's like, I mean, it's very, very specific stuff, and it's probably not the most exciting, but at the same time, there's something beneficial there. And most importantly, talking about nutritional education for kids so people will know what they're eating and they were less likely to get things like cancer, less likely to get things like diabetes. Even Rod Silva from the Nutrition Party was talking about that, even though he mostly ran for president as a publicity stunt. But many other candidates as well have talked about our need for reshaping education. Marianne Williamson's A Politics of Love begins by talking about the need for civics education. People need to know their rights. They need to know what they're consuming. And that all ties into conscious awareness. I mean, that's what they're really just encouraging people to do, to make more choices with awareness. Be conscious of what they are doing. That falls under this new term of being in the Gaia audience. Okay, well, what do you think about anything that we've said so far? And, I mean, I just talked about ecofeminism for a second because it's just a section of this that I think is a little bit different than many of the other sections in the Gaia audience. But if you have anything to say at all, what do you think about any of the ideas we've mentioned in here? And if you have any comments you'd like to drop below, please do so. Until next time.